Καλησπέρα σου. Καλησπέρα σου. Να ρωτήσω αυτό πώς σου άρεσε. Καλησπέρα σε όλους. Μανουέλ, σταμάτα να μιλάς, δεν βλέπω. Καλώς ήρθατε σε αυτή την εκδήλωση, στην οποία τα ατομικά μέλη και διάφοροι άλλοι φίλοι θα έχουν την ευκαιρία να μιλήσουν με τον προσκεκλημένο στον Σερ Γκρέιχαμ Βότσον, ο οποίος είναι ο πρόεδρος του ALDE. Και βασικά πριν αρχίσουμε τη συζήτηση με τον κύριο Βότσον, θα μπορείτε όλοι σας. Θα θέλω να σας κάνω μια μικρή αποτίμηση. Αυτή τη στιγμή τα ατομικά μέλη αριθμούν περίπου 80 άτομα. Είχαμε τη χαρά η Δέσποινα να αναλάβει γενικά την Κρήτη και να αρχίσουμε κάποιες δράσεις εκεί από τον Φεβρουάριο και μετά. Κοιτάμε να δούμε και για άλλες πόλεις όπως η Πάτρα και διάφορα άλλα μέρη. Και η λογική είναι να αρχίσουμε να περιορίσουμε την περιπτωσική μας δράση και να περάσουμε σε πιο απτές δράσεις και εκδηλώσεις, σεμινάρια, δράσεις. Μία ήδη είναι το παραπεριτήριο γραφειοκρατίας που θα μιλήσει ο Πάπης. Οπότε να μιλήσουν λίγο και οι υπόλοιποι συντονιστές και μετά να μιλήσω εγώ.
Σας καλωσορίζω και εγώ στην απόψινή μας εκδήλωση. Μόνο δύο κουβέντες σχετικά με την προϊστορία των Individual Members στην Ελλάδα. Ξεκίνησαν, είναι το πρώτο κόμμα το ALDE στην Ευρώπη και με χαρά αυτή τη στιγμή μπορούμε να σας ενημερώσουμε ότι έχουμε περάσει τα 1000 άτομα πανευρωπαϊκά. Προηγουμένως ο Ντάνιελ μου είπε ότι είναι στα 1000, εκ των οποίων οι 80 είμαστε στην Ελλάδα. Άρα, ενώ σε κάποιους άλλους δείκτες λένε ότι η Ελλάδα συμμετέχει με 2%, εδώ είμαστε περίπου στο 8%. Εύχομαι να μεγαλώσουμε. Έχουμε φιλοδοξίες, επειδή έχουμε και προβλήματα. Αυτά που ζούμε όλοι και αυτά που βλέπουμε όλοι. Και γι' αυτό πρέπει να ενεργοποιηθούμε μέσα από το σπίτι μας, μέσα από την Συμμαχία Δημοκρατών και Φιλελευθέρων της Ευρώπης. Θάρρος, κουράγιο και να κάνουμε περισσότερα πράγματα για τον φιλελευθερισμό, να ανοίξουμε δρόμους και να δουλέψουμε παράλληλα με κινήσεις που γίνονται για την ομογενοποίηση του χώρου, για τη συγκρότηση του χώρου. Δεν θέλω να κάνω κατάχρηση του χρόνου, αλλά τη βασική ομιλία θα την κάνει ο Μπάμπης ο Καλογιάννης, οπότε παραδίδω το μικρόφωνο. Σας ευχαριστούμε και πάλι.
Καλησπέρα και από μένα. Όπως έχετε καταλάβει, ο ενθουσιασμός του συλλογεί σιγά σιγά σε δράσεις με ουσία. Φεύγουμε από το Facebook, όπως πολύ σωστά είπε ο Μιχάλης προηγουμένως. Λοιπόν, να πούμε ότι σιγά σιγά είμαστε έτοιμοι να ξεκινήσουμε την εθνική μας ιστοσελίδα με ευθύνη των τοπικών ομάδων εδώ πέρα. Θα δημιουργήσουμε ξεχωριστή σελίδα για τα μέλη στο website του ALDE και θα συμπεριληφθούν τα ονόματα των μελών της Κοινωνικής Επιτροπής, ένα βιογραφικό και λεπτομέρειες για το παρατηρητήριο γραφειοκρατίας, το οποίο είναι αυτό ακριβώς που ακούτε. Θα έλεγα ότι δεν πρέπει να αφήσουμε τίποτα να πέσει κάτω. Δηλαδή, από κάθε μικρή ως κάθε μεγάλη ιστορία διαφθοράς ή γραφειοκρατίας, η οποία ορίζει τον επαγγελματία, τον μικρομεσαίο επιχειρηματία κτλ., θα την καταγράφουμε στην αρχή μέσω μιας σελίδας στο Facebook και αργότερα ίσως σε κάποιο πιο οργανωμένο site. Και στο κάτω-κάτω υπάρχει ένα ρητό που είχε πει ένας προφαίνος συγγραφέας, ο Ζάρκο Πέτανο, που λέει ότι ο πιο φιλόδοξος γραφειοκράτης εύχεται μια μέρα η πένα του να προωθεί σε λόγχη. Με αυτό νομίζω ότι καταλαβαίνετε την σημασία του εγχειρήματος αυτού. Θα είναι έτοιμο σε λίγες μέρες το παρατηρητήριο γραφειοκρατίας, θα σε ενημερώσουμε στις σελίδες μας και στο Facebook νομίζω. Λοιπόν, αυτά από μένα. Να δώσω το λόγο στην κυρία Δέσποινα Λιμιωτάκη να προλογίσει τον καλεσμένο μας. Ευχαριστώ πολύ από όλους.
Ναι, θα μιλήσει πρώτα η Αθηνά Ιδράκου γενικά και μετά η...
Graham so much for being here with us today. Welcome to Greece, sir. Μετά θα ήθελα να ευχαριστήσω πάρα πολύ τους coordinator μας στην Ελλάδα και την Εύα, η οποία... Εύα,
ένα μεγάλο ευχαριστώ
στην
Εύα Τσαροπούλου. Και στον Daniel. Daniel, thank you very much for all your help during these months. Actually, is one of the first members. You have the number 2, if I remember well. Yeah, he's the number 2 individual member. So he knows all the history of the individual members of the ALDE party. And a happy birthday to Othon Kesarios, whose birthday is today. Λίγα λόγια μόνο για το τι έχουμε κάνει σαν individual members. Έχει Κεσάριος, ναι, μην μπερδεύουμε. Ναι, λοιπόν, ήσαμε έτσι πάρα πολύ ενεργά. Τα individual members είναι 3 χρονών ήδη. Ξεκινήσαμε πάρα πολύ ενεργά μετά το συνέδριο του ALDE το Νοέμβριο του 2013. Τότε αρχίσαμε μία petition για να ζητήσουμε από το ALDE Party να εκλέξουμε την πρώτη μας συντονιστική επιτροπή. Αυτή η συντονιστική επιτροπή, οι εκλογές έγιναν τον Απρίλιο του 2014, έτσι δεν είναι, ναι. Ήμασταν τότε 650 άνθρωποι, διασκορπισμένοι σε όλη την Ευρώπη, χωρίς να έχει επαφή ουσιαστικά ο ένας με τον άλλον. Και το πρώτο πράγμα που κάναμε σαν συντονιστική επιτροπή ήταν να προσπαθήσουμε να δημιουργήσουμε εθνικά groups και να προσπαθήσουμε να τα φέρουμε σε επαφή το ένα με το άλλο. Ήταν ο κυριότερος μας στόχος για το 2014. Από εκεί και πέρα, ο άλλος στόχος μας για το 2014 ήταν να αυξήσουμε τα μέλη μας κατά 20%. Τα αυξήσαμε κατά 35% περίπου και συνεχίζουν και αυξάνονται. Ο στόχος μας για το 2015 είναι να έχουμε μία αύξηση 40%. Και εγώ και τα υπόλοιπα μέλη της Συντονιστικής Επιτροπής, οι 4 υπόλοιποι, ότι μπορούμε να το καταφέρουμε. Από εκεί και πέρα στην Ελλάδα ξεκινήσαμε ουσιαστικά τον Μάιο του 2014, όταν ήρθα εδώ και πρωτομίλησα μαζί με τον Μιχάλη και τον Γιώργο για το πώς θα μπορούσαμε να ενώσουμε τα 14 τότε μέλη που είχαμε, μόνο 14 μέλη, και από εκεί και πέρα να μεγαλώσουμε το δίκτυο των individual members. Είμαι πάρα πολύ χαρούμενη και πάρα πολύ περήφανη που έχουμε φτάσει περίπου τα 80 μέλη τώρα και αυξανόμαστε με πάρα πολύ μεγάλη ταχύτητα. Ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ τα παιδιά εδώ για όλη την προσπάθεια που έχουν κάνει. Και αυτά βασικά από εμάς. Από τη Συντονιστική Επιτροπή σίγουρα τα μέλη μας λαμβάνετε όλη την αλληλογραφία και θα λάβετε περισσότερα το επόμενο διάστημα. Αλλά η περισσότερη δουλειά από εδώ και πέρα, ο σκοπός μας είναι να αρχίσει να γίνεται πιο local, πιο σε εθνικό επίπεδο. Κάθε χώρα να έχει τη δική της μια ανεξαρτησία να κάνει δράσεις και εμείς στη Συντονιστική Επιτροπή απλά να βοηθούμε όπου μπορούμε και όπως μπορούμε. Σας ευχαριστώ πάρα πολύ και πάλι στο κύριο. We're switching to English and this is Despina, so she's our newest coordinator.
Να μιλήσω πρώτα στα ελληνικά, να πω ότι φέρνω χαιρετισμό από την Κρήτη και να ευχαριστήσω πάρα πολύ τα μέλη που πριν εγγραφώ εγώ η ίδια και ξεκινήσω με έκαναν δεκτή με πολύ ενθουσιασμό και με εμπιστεύτηκαν να αναλάβω το κομμάτι της Κρήτης. Είμαστε μια μικρή ομάδα, αλλά ευελπιστούμε να γίνουμε περισσότεροι και πραγματικά πιστεύουμε σε αυτή την ένωση και πιστεύουμε ότι μπορεί να προωθήσει ιδέες, να προωθήσει καθαρή πολιτική και να βοηθήσει τον τόπο μας για το μέλλον. Λοιπόν, θα το γυρίσω στα αγγλικά τώρα, λίγο πριν σας παραδώσω σε συζήτηση με τον φιλοξενούμενο μας. So, today we have the pleasure of having with us the person who truly brings democracy, freedom, and individual responsibility forward, and acts at the heart of the liberal philosophy and culture. Sir Graham Watson was firstly elected President of the European Liberal Democrat Party on a 2-year mandate in 2011 in Palermo, Italy, and was re-elected for a second term in 2013 at the London Congress. It is a wish from all of us that we strengthen our community, that we share more ideas with him, that we establish a partnership between Greece and Europe in the near future. So, dear friends, I give you the ALDE Party President, Sir Graham Watson.
Thank you very much for your kind invitation. It's a great pleasure and an honour to be here in your company, particularly in the company of my old friend and colleague Theodoros Kalakakis, with whom I had the to serve in the European Parliament. I apologise to you that I cannot speak to you in the language of Georgios Seferis. I could speak to you in the language of Dante or Goethe or Molière. I will speak to you in the language of Shakespeare, but I regret I have not yet mastered yours. If you allow me, I would like to share with you some thoughts in general terms about where we are as Europeans, how we got here, and what we need to do to get out. I will not speak specifically, although in question and answer I will be very pleased to do so. And I will try to be brief. I must tell you that the very first meeting I ever spoke to in politics was a little like this. It was a group of farmers in my constituency in the west of Scotland many years ago. And I was very nervous. I turned to the chairman and I said, "Chairman, how long should I speak for?" And the, "As you like, young man, but we leave here at 9 o'clock. It was the best lesson I ever had in politics. I will try not to break it. Cast your minds back, just for a moment, just over 20 years, to 1994. In 1994, the European Union moved from being a trading bloc to the beginnings of a political community. The Treaty of Maastricht introduced not only cooperation in areas beyond economic policy and trade, but also the process of making decisions by majority vote rather than by unanimity. And many of us believed, and I was elected to the European Parliament in 1994. I had the honour of serving 20 years in total. Many of us believed that we were building a political community in Europe. If you want to know what I think about it and what liberals have done about it, buy my book, Building a Liberal Europe. It's available from John Harper Publishing in London. It talks about what we did between 1994 and 2009 to try to advance that idea of a political Europe. We went through a series of treaties, the Treaty of Amsterdam in 1998-99, the Treaty of Nice in 2001, the failed attempts to agree a constitution for Europe in 2007, and then eventually the Lisbon Treaty in 2000. But in the meantime, something big had happened. We had gone into an extremely deep recession, and some of the problems of nationalism, which we had failed to iron out, suddenly revive. And what we see now is a European Union which has lost its way. My latest book is called Continental Drift. A European Union which has lost its way, which is incapable of taking the kind of decisions involving 28 national governments that need to, and the explosion of nationalism in many of our countries. In the member state which I know best, in the European elections last year, the United Kingdom Independence Party, which is an English national party, took 33% of the popular vote. In France, the National Front, the Front National, took 35% of the popular vote. And in Italy, a movement led by a stand-up comic called Pepe Grillo, the Movimento 5 Stelle, took well over 35% of the national vote. We are living in a time when these movements are on the up. I don't need to tell you that. You have seen it in your election here in Greece last Sunday. Why has it happened? Well, it's happened for two reasons. The first is that recession, economic hardship, is very unkind to liberals. Think back to the First World War, or the First European Civil War, because in reality it was a European Civil War. I remember the words of Grey, the Foreign Secretary in Britain, when he said, "The lights are going out over Europe." It was not Churchill who said it, it was Grey, first of all. The First World War did huge damage to liberal ideas. The Second World War and the recession that it engendered almost killed liberalism stone dead. Had it not been for the power of liberal thought, for this tremendous heritage of liberal ideas which we all share, which come cascading down the hillsides of history over generations, starting probably here in Greece with Mr. Socrates, had it not been for the force of our ideas, there would be no liberal parties in Europe today. In this last recession, which has been a very deep recession, we have come out of it still alive, although not in very good shape. Why? Partly because we have managed to increase, through liberal policies, the average levels of education across our continent, and the average standard of living in terms of life chances, in terms of health care, in terms of opportunities, and in terms of the breaking down of barriers which enslaved people. And so we have anchored in people's minds the idea that the liberal state can produce good things for them. Those ideas are under attack, but they are still much stronger than has been the case after previous deep recessions. The politics of nationalism are essentially a retreat into the past. They are a retreat into the old certainties, into the kind of atavistic sense of comfort. And of course they add to the demonization of, be they economic migrants or asylum seekers or simply others living in each of our communities. But the politics of nationalism and the politics of identity more generally are very closely linked. And one of the interesting things that's happening at the same time as we see a revival of nationalism is a revival of European identity. I can point to it more convincingly through anecdote than through data. But data is, after all, only the plural of anecdote. But take a situation where a few young Europeans are together studying in Shanghai. They know that they're European. They may come from Poland, from Bulgaria, from Portugal, but they feel a common bond as Europeans. And not only in Shanghai. It is the same in Lagos, in Buenos Aires, and even in New York. Take the 10% perhaps of Europe's population who in some way in their daily professional lives are involved in dealings with people from other European countries. They are convinced of the merits of us working together as Europeans. Take the generation of Erasmus students. Still only a small percentage of Europe's population. But we've put millions of students through that scheme. And it has led, one of the things that's led to many mixed marriages. Do you know the most optimistic statistic in Europe at the moment? It comes from that wonderful office, Eurostat, the European Statistical Office. One marriage in every 5 on our continent is between people holding different passports. One marriage in 5. Now, think about the implications of that in 20 years' time. You cannot turn fish soup back into an aquarium. We are building a European Union. And we're building a European Union essentially because our people recognize, somewhere perhaps subliminally, that the biggest challenges they face are challenges which all Europeans must face together. They are supranational challenges. Of course, the biggest and the most immediate is the challenge of survival and prosperity in a global economy in which the main decisions are taken not in Athens or in London or even in Brussels or Berlin. They are in the computer campuses of West Coast America. They are taken in the call centers of India. They are taken in the factories of China and Vietnam and Brazil and South Africa and so on. We are trying to maintain our standards of living through being smarter, through investing in technology, even though our population is declining and the number of engineering graduates coming out of Indian universities is far greater than the number of engineering graduates coming out of our universities. We are aware that we need trade because trade helps to improve our standards of living. Indeed, as Adam Smith pointed out, trade is the single most powerful tool that we have for lifting people out of poverty very quickly. And unless we can lift a very large number of people across the world out of poverty, then we are not going to deal with some of the major challenges we face. Remember John F. Kennedy. What was it John F. Kennedy said? He said, I'm trying to remember the quote, and it went something like this. He said, if we cannot help the millions who are poor, we will never save the few who are rich. And that is one of the challenges we face in the global economy. But look at the other big challenges. The challenge of rapid world population growth and greater pressure for migration than we have ever known before. Because we have become wealthy societies, and people in other parts of the world are doing what our grandparents and great-grandparents did when they were faced with poverty, disease, squalor, discrimination in Europe, they emigrated in large numbers to America or Australia or Canada or wherever. I'm sure you can find Greek names as well as you can find British names in any city in Australia. I spent some time in my youth in Montreal. There is a thriving Greek community there. Well, what's happening now is that people facing disease, squalor, environmental degradation, war in other parts of the world are trying to come to the wealthier parts, and we are one of those wealthier parts. But if you really look at the extent of this problem, in these terms, in 1912 and 1913, America took in over 1 million migrants every year. We are having problems with pressure for perhaps 350,000 migrants. Actually, we need that number of people at least in Europe's economy if we are going to replace the fact that we're not having children anymore because we're getting wealthier, and we're going to have a major problem maintaining our social welfare systems because there are not going to be enough young people to do the jobs that will need to be done. And in particular, not going to be people who will do them for the kind of wages that are on offer, for the kind of jobs which immigrants traditionally will do, where others perhaps are less keen. Take the joint problem, or the joint challenge of change, and at the moment oil prices are at their lowest for some time, so nobody's worrying. Everybody's saying, won't sell us gas, let us exploit shale gas. The Americans have done it, we can do it as well. The reality is that there is only one given in this equation. The world's scientists tell us that unless 2/3 of all the known oil and gas reserves, all the known hydrocarbon reserves in the world, stay in the ground, then we have not a hope in hell of limiting average temperature rise to only 2 degrees centigrade in this century. We've got to make a very, very serious effort to move from hydrocarbons to renewable energy, or at least low carbon energy, if we are to have a planet that we can hand to our children and our grandchildren, which they can inhabit. The Germans are boasting a lot about how every so often now Germany produces more than half of its electricity needs from solar panels on people's roofs. Well, the Germans were not very intelligent here, because if they had put their solar panels on the roofs of houses in Greece and Italy, they would first of all have produced twice as much energy. And secondly, they would have helped the economy of Greece and Italy in the bargain. So there's a bit of supranational thinking needed here as well. But we have a major challenge on our hands, and unless Europe as a whole grapples with this problem, we're going to be in serious trouble. And that is one of the reasons why the European Union is working very hard, energy union, with much better interconnection, so that we can share the energy sources available than we have at present. The Chinese, incidentally, are working on the idea of a global electricity internet, where you connect up everywhere so that you can take energy from the deserts or wind energy from the Arctic and draw that energy in to the centres of population where you have the greatest demand. Let me not go on too long about that. Let me mention the third big challenge that we all face, and it's a challenge that politicians don't like to talk about. It's the challenge of internationally organised crime linked to terrorism. This morning in Riga, in Latvia, the Home Office ministers, the interior ministers of all of our member states were meeting to discuss an explosion of terrorism, Charlie Hebdo in Paris. I've shown the same concern when hundreds, if not thousands, of Syrians were being driven out of their homes by Islamic terrorism through Boko Haram. The reality is, we have allowed, through our policies in some areas, we have allowed international criminal gangs to finance themselves primarily on the basis of the drugs and the trafficking of small arms, but to some extent also through the trafficking of weapons-grade plutonium. And those criminal gangs are now using religion as an excuse for some of the political goals that they hold. We have a major problem on our hands of internationally organized crime linked to terrorism. And if you want to know the extent, look at the reports from the Financial Action Task Force of the G20. They estimate that 4% of all the money that passes through the world's financial systems is the proceeds of organized crime. That's $5 trillion a year. It's a major challenge for us. Now, all of these are challenges that we face and we have to do something about. We are not going to face them unless we can build a coherent community here in Europe, working together with other coherent, well-governed communities in other parts of the world. And in order to do that, we're going to have to create a European political identity. And to me, that is the role of what we're trying to do in the ALDE party and what the socialists are trying to do and some others, of associate members. We're bringing people together not on the basis of nationality or even necessarily the basis of adherence to one national political party or another. We're bringing them together on the basis of a common idea and a common identity in European terms. And we achieved one thing, quite incredibly, but we did, last year. We had a European election in which each party chose one candidate, well, no, two. Each party had one candidate in that election. And the candidate of the party which polled the most votes, Jean-Claude Juncker, became the President of the European Commission. No European election in the future will ever be the same again, because you cannot reverse that process. And we will see the parties selecting their candidates earlier. We will see those candidates going out and campaigning across Europe much earlier in the process and engendering a debate about the kind of Europe we want. In that process, it is essential that we regain the idea of citizenship. What has happened in national politics, and I guess it's the same in Greece as anywhere else, is that political parties have started to treat the voters not as citizens, but as consumers. And they treated politics as selling or packaging of ideas which are designed to appeal to the people who go out and vote. What that does is it robs us of the civic freedom to control the aggregate outcomes of millions of private choices. So in the process of building this European consciousness, we have to regain the idea of the citizen being different from the consumer. Because the choice of politics is a choice, I would argue, at a higher level than the choice between one brand of beer and another brand of beer when you go to the supermarket or to a bar. That, to me, is what things are about at the moment. We're going to have a very interesting year. We had an election in Greece last Sunday with an outcome which is still difficult to predict, but which doesn't look terribly good to me. The politics, forget all of the things about turning back the reforms and so on. Let me just take one aspect of the new government in Greece. There are 10 senior ministers. Not one of them is a woman. what does that say about the kind of society that we are building? You know, there will be many things to criticise about Alex Tsipras, but I hope that one does not go unnoticed. It's a nationalist government in every sense, as you see by the choice of coalition partner. We're going to have an election in Spain this year, and it may be that Podemos will defeat the Partido Popular. At the moment, they are ahead in the opinion polls. We are going to have an election in my country, the United Kingdom, and if the Conservatives win, there will be a referendum on whether we leave the European Union. In my view, it's wise, because nobody can predict the outcome at the moment. We are going to be in for a very tough year. The thing that fills me with optimism is that wherever I look in Europe, I see beginning to organise, and I see liberal ideas, liberal ideology of introduction. I apologise, but are there any questions?
Okay. So the idea was this, that this is the prologue. So since we're all liberals and in general Greeks tend to be quite outspoken, and this is a unique opportunity for everyone here to actually discuss things with a chairman of a Euro party, I will open the floor basically, and I expect all of you who have an opinion or a question to do so. The only request is first members, and then if we have time, all the other guests are welcome to actually state their opinion or ask a question. So I'm opening the floor to you initially. So no one? Okay. No.
Hello, my name is Leo Lostrom. Okay, I was a candidate in the elections for the European Parliament. At the time, I asked the question, why couldn't we stand under the banner of ALDE, as we were a coalition between Drassi and Individi and various other parties? Why couldn't we stand with the name ALDE, or a Greek version of that name?
Look, it's a very good question, and I have two difficulties in answering it. The first difficulty I have is that I was the leader of the Liberal Democrat members of the European Parliament from 2002 until 2009. I stood down in 2009, and Guy Verhofstadt was elected to succeed me. And you know that there is a rule in politics that you never criticize your successor. You know, they say in politics that you can always criticize the person who comes before you. You can say, well, I was elected because he or she was useless. But the person who comes after you, you can only say, well, that was a very interesting choice. Look, Guy's decision was to try to do what he knows from Belgian politics. He was Prime Minister of his country for 9 years, and he plays power politics. And he wanted to find a party with which he could go, and he chose Potami. You know, party we support, if any, comes from those people. It has to come up from the party. It can't come from somebody outside, from a country who will never know politics as well as liberals on the ground.
Next.
Ναι, είναι ωραία. Θα ήθελα και χαίρομαι που βρίσκομαι σε αυτή την παρέα. Θα ήθελα να πω δύο λόγια πρώτα απ' όλα για μένα. Δεν ξεκίνησα σαν φιλελεύθερος. Όταν ήμουν πιτσιρικάς ήμουνα αριστερός, ήθελα να αλλάξει τον κόσμο και τέτοια πράγματα. Όχι ότι ήταν κακό αυτό, αλλά μέσα από τη διαδικασία της ζωής ανακάλυψα κάτι, ότι ο φιλελευθερισμός είναι ανάγκη. Δεν θα το πεις. Περασμένη φορά που είχα έρθει στο ALDE Individual, είχα την αίσθηση, δύο πράγματα να σας πω. Ο φιλελευθερισμός είναι τόσο συκοφαντισμένος, έχει τόσο πολύ συκοφαντηθεί, που λέω, κοίταξε να δεις τώρα, τι άνθρωποι θα είναι αυτοί, θα είναι δράκοι. Φυσικά δεν πίστευα εγώ κάτι τέτοιο, αλλά πολλοί φίλοι μου και συγγενείς, όταν ακούνε για φιλελευθερισμό, σηκώνονται οι τρίχες τους. Δεν θέλω να κρατήσω πολύ μόνο εγώ, αλλά μέσα από την κρίση, εγώ είμαι από το ποτάμι και είμαι και μέλος του ALDE. Ακούγοντας το Σταύρο να πει κάτι, έκατσα και έγραψα μερικές προτάσεις προς το ποτάμι και προς το ALDE. Αυτές οι προτάσεις δεν συζητήθηκαν ποτέ ούτε από το ποτάμι, ούτε από το ALDE, αλλά νομίζω ότι θα ήθελα να τις δούμε. Δεν ξέρω αν είναι τώρα η κατάλληλη στιγμή να προχωρήσω ή...
Αυτή τη στιγμή τώρα να τα συζητήσουμε επί μακρόν, όχι, αλλά εγώ θα πρότεινα γενικά, άμα θέλεις να το συζητήσουμε όταν είμαστε στο επόμενο meeting, ευχαριστώ. Ναι, άμα θέλεις να κάνεις μια παρουσίαση.
Ωραία.
Τώρα με μετάφραση να καθίσουμε να συζητήσουμε είναι λίγο πρόβλημα.
Καλώς, εντάξει. Η βασική ιδέα να πω μόνο, για τις προτάσεις αυτές χρησιμοποίησα την εμπειρία της ζωής μου και τρία βιβλία. Το ένα βιβλίο ήταν το αόρατο ρήγμα του Δοξιάδη, το άλλο ήταν ο δρόμος προς τη δουλεία του Χαγέκ, και το τρίτο ήταν γιατί αποτυχάνουν τα έθνη του Ακέμογλου Ρόμπινσον. Αυτά τα βιβλία μου έδωσαν ένα θεωρητικό υπόβαθρο για να καταλάβω ότι το πρόβλημα στην Ελλάδα είναι πρόβλημα θεσμών. Και εδώ ήθελα να πω ότι για να έχουμε στην Ευρώπη πρέπει να έχουμε ίδιους ή παρόμοιους θεσμούς. Στην Ελλάδα οι θεσμοί είναι extractive, εκμεταλλευτικοί και το ερώτημα είναι πώς αλλάζουν οι θεσμοί. Είναι κάτι... Ένας τρόπος να αλλάξουν οι θεσμοί είναι, νομίζω, όπως έγινε με την Ανατολική και Δυτική Γερμανία, όπου είχαμε ένα πλαίσιο τη Δυτική Γερμανία και η Ανατολική Γερμανία ήταν ένας λαός αποφασισμένος.
Να απαντήσει γενικά για να μην το μακροβολούμε.
Μα δεν έγινε ερώτηση.
Όχι, πώς μπορεί να γίνει πιο inclusive οι θεσμοί.
East versus West Germany. The East Germans have the great fortune to have West German cousins to come in and save them. I know, I was a student at the University of Leipzig in the German Democratic Republic in 1976-77, and it was a hell of a place to live. And they desperately needed reform, and the West Germans came and did it. But you know, I think we crossed a Rubicon in April of 2013 because I think that was the moment at which Angela Merkel decided that if it was necessary, the European Union was going to bail out Cyprus and Greece and Italy and Spain and Portugal and Ireland. Now she hopes and hopes it won't be necessary to have to do all that. But she did. And since then, if you come to Brussels, very interesting, stand on the Rond-Point Schuman, where the European Commission is, within an area of about 2 square kilometers, you will see no fewer than 12 or 13 cranes. There are building sites everywhere. We are literally building the institutions of governance, the physical buildings in Brussels, and the apartments that will house the people who are going to work in them. Now, I hope we see some more of these cranes and building sites in other cities as well, because the economy needs it. But it is happening. Something changed in the minds of the Germans. The Germans decided that even if Britain, stupidly in my view, even if Britain decides to leave the European Union, they are going ahead. Now, to me, that is a very interesting change. I don't suggest that it lets Alex Tsipras off the hook. But I do suggest that, you know, just as the Germans have allowed Mario Draghi to do a program of quantitative easing, they did not like it, but it's happening. I think there will be a little more understanding for some of the difficulties in countries like Greece. But it will only happen if there is a reciprocal move. And the problem, it seems to me, with Samaras and Papademos is they were prepared to do the austerity, to cut budgets, but they weren't prepared to do the reforms. And actually the reforms are more important. And you have to do the reforms first, because they take longer to have an effect. And you want to do the austerity a bit later, because at least when you are then cutting, you can expect the economy to grow again afterwards. The textbook example of this has to be Latvia. Small country, 2 million people. But the Latvians went through a terrible period of 3 to 4 years of very painful reforms and austerity after their property market exploded. The Irish did something similar. The United Kingdom and Germany did it in a slightly different way over a slightly longer time scale, but they did it. And whoever is in government in Greece is going to have to do that if they want to benefit from the solidarity of the other European countries. And I think that is a message that, you know, we have to put out. The solidarity is there, but it has to be matched with responsibility. We are not seeing that responsibility at the moment in Italy, but we are seeing it in Spain, where some quite interesting reforms are taking place. We have seen it in Ireland, and we are beginning to see it in Portugal. But, you know, democracy is the worst system of government, apart from all the others. And the reason why it's the worst is that countries generally get the governments they deserve, even if people never like to admit it.
Απλά αν έχει κάποιος γενικά να επιστρέψουμε.
Αν τελειώσανε τα μέλη, θα ήθελα και εγώ.
Έχει κάποιο άλλο μέλος το οποίο θέλει να πει κάτι και θα ξαναγυρίσουμε. Ωραία, ο κύριος Σερβάνος και ο κύριος Σκυλακάκη.
Ποιος είναι πρώτα?
Όποιος προτιμάζει.
First of all, Graham, thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure to what you have to say. I have two questions. One is European on the European agenda, and one on our agenda. Let me come first with the European one. We have Mr. Juncker as our president of the Commission, which is very good for a democratic process, but not good for the symbols that we have at this moment, because we know that Juncker, through the leaks, has played a major role in tax, let's say, avoidance in Europe. And this is a very bad symbol for Europe at this moment. In the next election, can we think of a joint candidate so that we can fight conservatives on an equal basis? Because as we have joint candidates for parties in national elections, we can have them also in European ones. And this is something that ALDE and the Liberals must think about if we want to play a role and not be left at the end of the discussion like we had today, because if first past the post is the next president, always the conservatives for the next 20 years, or socialists, will be the major players. That's the European question. Now, on the Greek question, I would like to put to you two numbers. We have in Greece close to 3 million people working in the private sector in any fashion. Farmers, self-employed, businessmen, work employees, etc. And we have the same number as pensioners. And this has been part of the problem, or a major part of the problem, our fiscal problem and our productivity problem. And the Troika and the European partners have not really tackled it in the last 4 or 5 years. We are still having people aged 50 getting a pension today, perfectly healthy, in Greece, with Troika's acceptance. And my question is not on this issue, but how much the European institutions are compromising on the local political agendas and parties. This has been our major problems as liberals. The fact that the European institutions have been compromising on the wrong issues in a number of cases. Thanks.
Can I allow me, Theodoros, to deal with the first, the second item first. On the balance, I share your concern. I touched in my opening remarks very briefly on the demographics. And the big problem we have is because we're not having that there will soon be a situation where every 2 people of working age are supporting 2 pensioners. And it might even reach the situation where you have 1 person of working age supporting 2 pensioners, and that is unsustainable in any economy. And it is my view, therefore, we should radically change our policy towards those who wish to emigrate to Europe. It has to be done on a continental level. It has to be bought into by every member state. But we should radically change that because our population profile is dangerous. But you're right, there has been a compromise at European level, those countries which have the worst problems. Now, I'm very proud because until May of last year, in fact until July of last year, I was one of those state employees. I'd been a member of the European Parliament for 20 years. I was a cost centre rather than a profit centre. On the 1st of October, I established my own business because I need to make a living. I didn't marry money and I didn't inherit money. Big mistakes. And I'm now a profit centre. And I'm now paying the tax man a lot of money out of what I earn every month. You know. More of us have to do that, and countries have to recognise that we cannot have the kind of statistics which I recall you so eloquently presented at a breakfast organised by the Naumann Foundation in Brussels. You cannot have a society of, say, 10 million people in which you've got 3 million pensioners, 3 million state employees, 2 million unemployed, and very few people in the productive economy to support those. You have to organise on a better way. And, you know, I think we need to look back at Einstein. I think it was Einstein who said, only the universe and man's stupidity are infinite. And then he said, and I'm not sure about the universe. Your first question was about Jean-Claude Juncker and joint candidates. I wasn't sure. Did you mean a joint candidate between ALDE and the EPP?
Or the socialists?
A joint... yeah. Well, I personally would not exclude that possibility, because you can sometimes do a coalition if you want to. When Jean-Claude Juncker was selected, he won the contest by not a very great margin over Michel Barnier, who had been the French European Commissioner. Now, Michel Barnier would have been somebody far more acceptable to liberals, and probably far better for Europe, because of what he represents. Juncker is, in a sense, yesterday's Europe. But I think the jury is still out on Jean-Claude Juncker. I don't exclude the fact that he turned out to be somebody who, because of his seniority, because of his huge length of experience, might just manage to sort out 28 national governments. We'll see. One has to remain optimistic. It's part of the DNA of a liberal.
Λέγομαι Αλαβάνος Ιάκωβος και θα ήθελα να σας ρωτήσω σχετικά με τη συνθήκη της Λισαβόνας, αν η εφαρμογή της, που έχω την εντύπωση, αν δεν κάνω λάθος, ότι ισχύει από το 2009, είναι αρκετή για να στηρίξει και να καλύψει πλέον στις σημερινές συνθήκες τα κράτη-μέλη της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης. Σαν υποψήφιος ευρωβουλευτής στις εκλογές είχα διαβάσει τη συνθήκη για να μπορώ να τοποθετούμε στα διάφορα θέματα και θυμάμαι ότι από το άρθρο 24 μέχρι το 45 αναφερόταν σε θέματα εθνικής άμυνας και κάπου εκεί ότι δεν επιτρέπεται η εσχροκέρδεια μεταξύ των κρατών μελών. Από ό,τι κατάλαβα κι εσείς, εγώ ήμουνα με το Ευρωπαϊκό Πράσινο Κόμμα, έτσι, με τους οικολόγους πράσινους ήμουνα υποψήφιος. Από ό,τι κατάλαβα και εσείς πλέον σαν νεοφιλελεύθεροι στηρίζετε τις προτάσεις σας. Ναι, φιλελεύθεροι, συγγνώμη, απλώς. Στο ηθικό κέρδος. Άρα λοιπόν, για να μην μακρηγορώ, θα ήθελα να μου πείτε τη γνώμη σας αν η συνθήκη της Λισαβόνας είναι σε ισχύ όπως θα έπρεπε να είναι ή αν θέλει τροποποιήσεις και αν η αμυντική πλέον κατάσταση της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης μπορεί να διαμορφωθεί ώστε να περικλεί όλα τα κράτη-μέλη και να μην υπάρχουν ή αδυναμίες ή κενά στα
Green MEP candidate, and his question about the Lisbon Treaty and about defense spending, and whether the clauses in there talk about profit margin, which is ethical and not unethical between state members of the EU, and whether we as liberals believe that there could be a common defense treaty. What is our opinion on that issue? Whether the Lisbon Treaty is being enforced as it should be, and whether there could be a common defense force in Europe which could ensure all the borders of Europe.
Thank you. will you allow me to break all of the rules of politics and give you a completely honest answer? I don't know how Alex Tsipras intends to pay for the cost of what he intends to do with the economy. But I guess that somewhere in his mind is that he might cut defence spending very substantially. Because Greece has one of the highest per capita spends on defence in the European Union. Okay, it's low.
Not anymore.
Is it about 2.5% or is it further down than that?
It's further down, and most of it it's not. It's just paying the
Maintaining camps and basically overheads which are for personnel or
The actual was plus all debts for us.
The new Minister of Defense announced
for tilting subs and various things like
Mr.
that.
Kamenos as the new Minister of Defense
explain-
will
Explain what I was reading.
Ready to buy Russian guns.
Okay. A big percentage of the Greek deficit was
Towards Germany for defense spending.
for the defense. And
I mean, as a liberal, I believe it would make eminently good sense to have a European defence policy. It is absolutely crazy to maintain 28 different armies, 28 different air forces, and probably not quite 28 different navies, because not every country has a sea border, although even Austria has a navy, a small one. I mean, it makes no sense whatsoever. We should have started, in my view, we should have started the European Union as a European defence community. We would probably have done so had it not been for a vote in the Assemblée Nationale in Paris in 1954, where the Schuman plan for a European defence community was voted down. As a result, we started with an agricultural policy, and we all know the upshot of that. I mean, you know, we built Europe the wrong way, but if we are serious about it, we're going to have to do far more joint procurement, far more common thinking. At the moment, I believe I'm right in saying that there are 7 different electronic communication systems, walkie-talkie systems, used by European Union armies. So soldiers are not even necessarily able to talk to each other on the battlefield. In addition to which, some people buy their equipment from America, some people buy their equipment elsewhere. As a result of which we have not developed 1 or 2 big European defence suppliers in the way that the Americans have done, because we don't have a properly functioning market in this area. There would be eminently good sense in doing it, and it has to be one of the ways forward. But I know from my own country that if you go and talk about a common European army, you know, everybody's going to throw rocks at you. So you have to do it a little slightly more gently, talking about joint exercises, joint procurement, and at scale.
Έχω μια ερώτηση μέσω Facebook, την οποία θα ήθελα να κάνω και εγώ στον Πρόεδρο. Τι κάνει το ALDE για να πολεμήσει τους πολλούς κανονισμούς που μπαίνουν σε διάφορα θέματα, αυτό που λέμε over-regulation.
What does that do for over-regulation of the European
What does ALDE do for over-regulation? Well, I think the first thing I would say is that the number of new directives or regulations coming out of Brussels is actually very small these days. Most of the work that goes on is to do with the revision of existing legislation. If I take an example, we have most of the legislation governing electronic communications goes back to a series of directives adopted in 2002. We're now 2015, the age of electronic communications has changed beyond recognition. There is a revision of that legislation going on. But Juncker has said that he wants to cut back even further the amount of new legislation that's coming, and he wanted to cut some of the environmental legislation, which I think is not necessarily a good idea. You know, there is that the European Union should only be intervening with legislation where you cannot achieve the desired outcome in other areas. So I think things are getting better. But what we have done specifically as a political force is to take two initiatives, one of which has been very successful, the other of which has been partially. The first was to insist that whenever the European Commission brings forward a new proposal, it is accompanied by an impact assessment. In other words, you look at what's this going to do? How much cost is it going to add to national governments who have to implement it? How many extra people is it going to require to police this legislation and so on? And that has been by and large successful. The other thing that we've done, successful, but still it's moving forward, is to oblige the Commission to produce what we call correlation tables. Now, to explain what a correlation table is that when a piece of legislation has entered into force, they should actually produce a document showing how Germany has implemented this directive into Germany. Or sometimes how Bavaria has implemented it and how Niedersachsen has implemented it, because sometimes it goes down to a Länder level. How Greece has implemented the law, how Britain has implemented the law, how Sweden has implemented the law. So that you can actually look at the legislation and you can see how well it has been put into effect in the different countries. As a result of this exercise, we discovered that some of the animal welfare legislation in Spain, particularly legislation regarding the keeping of chickens, had been put perfectly into Spanish law. But there were only inspectors to cover the whole of Spain. In other words, they were not complying with the legislation. Or probably not. That's the kind of thing that we need to do to make government work more effectively. Because we need citizens to have confidence that government is working. And that is something that we have lost.
Okay.
First of all, I would like to thank you for being here. And I would like to make a question to you. Through your introduction and the answers that you gave to the questions, you pointed out a lot of aspects of the liberal, European liberal, or the ALDE agenda towards a united and strong Europe. Given the fact that nowadays the Euroscepticism is increasing in several countries through Europe, I would suspect that it would take a lot of coalitions and collaboration with other parties that agree to the agenda of ALDE. But as well, I think that it will take an increase of the strength of the liberals throughout Europe, translated in more ALDE seats in the European Parliament. What is the plan of the liberals towards this situation?
Yanis, let me try to answer that effectively. I mean, we recognise that what we are saying is contested by many people. I do not call them Eurosceptics, because we should all be skeptics. The essence of liberalism is to be skeptical about government. What these people are is they are Euro opponents. They are the people who want to destroy the European Union for whatever reason, and there are many different reasons. There is quite a lot of worrying evidence about the amount of money from East Coast America, which went into the No campaign in the Irish referendum on the Lisbon Treaty, for example. There are all kinds of opponents of this. My argument to anybody who says, well, Europe is a bad thing or you don't need Europe, is the same argument that John Maynard Keynes gave to people who doubted his economic policies. He said, public opinion is gravely against me. Only the evidence is firmly on my side. You know, we've just got to keep beating, and it will not be easy. If you look at the European elections last year, we did terribly badly in the United Kingdom. We had 11 MEPs before the election. We went down to 1. In Germany, we went down from 13 to 3. In other countries, we had pretty bad results. But in the Netherlands, we had one of our best results ever. In Belgium, we had an extremely good result. In Spain, in fact, on the Iberian Peninsula generally. In Finland, in Denmark, we had good results. Why is this? How do you explain what's happening? Well, partly it's because people are still voting with a national mindset rather than a European mindset. But partly it's because some liberal parties have developed better ways of getting their message across to the people than others. And so one of the things that the party is trying to do, I mean, the party which I run has a total staff of only 12 people. But we are putting a lot of resources into working with member parties to improve their campaigning skills and to help them to hone their messages more effectively. And if that is something that we can do in Greece in the run-up to the next elections, we would be very, very happy to.
Can I also add something to that?
It's not just ALDE that wants to help. There are quite a few parties from all over Europe, like D66, for instance, which is one of the parties in Holland that is first, that was first in the and the municipal elections, who are also perfectly willing to come here, train people if they want to run for elections, etc., etc., etc. This is something we need to discuss as individual members, because, for instance, even if we have this whole party issue of various liberal parties in Greece, we could make this discussion, for instance, in the municipal elections. We are talking, for instance, D66 went, I think, from third party in municipal elections to first with The Hague, Amsterdam, and I mean half the major cities. And these people are willing to come here for free to train people, liberals who wish to run for elections. So this is something we all can discuss if we're willing to do so.
So, first there and there. Okay.
Sir Graham, thanks a lot for your interesting speech. My name is Dora Bakirji, and I would like also to thank you for coming at this critical moment to Greece. It was so nice to have you here. We are in front of great but uncertain changes, and we are all alert. I agree with your comment regarding the coalition of the new government with the Nationalism, an extreme right party. And also Mr. Verhofstadt stated this intensely. But on the other hand, I would like also, and I am expecting from others to have the same criteria in other cases. What I'm telling regarding Ukraine crisis. And we have there pro-Nazi government which does not respect the freedom of speech, the freedom of speaking your native language. We have there a big minority, the Greek minority. It is the biggest minority of European Union in Ukraine. Nobody cares for them, even our previous Greek government. So I'm asking, what are you doing there? How we can stop this war? Because we have a war, we have there more than 4,000 victims. How we can change the European policy on this?
Thank you, Bora. I share your concern about this. I was in Kiev not very many weeks ago, talking to people there. I mean, what happened with the Russian invasion of the Crimea was no less than what happened with Hitler's invasion of the Sudetenland. And he used the same arguments. And when it happened in 1939, Europe went to war over it. And this time we have not. Why have we not? Well, for two reasons.
We don't have enough.
One is we don't have a European army, but two reasons are, number one, we have developed a culture which says avoid armed conflict wherever possible. Try everything else first. And the second is that we had no agreement between the member states to do anything more than to put sanctions in place and gradually to escalate those sanctions. Now, my own view is that those sanctions are probably working. I think the situation in Russia is actually appallingly bad, not only because of the sanctions, but also because of the fall in the price of oil. But the situation in Russia is critically bad. But the reality is, as we saw in Mariupol the other day, that very large numbers of people are being killed in a very brutal war. And we cannot go on ignoring that kind of thing. You've either got to be prepared to give massive support to the government of Ukraine to allow them their own citizens properly, or you're very close to the moment where that decision has to be made. I'm aware that I think there's some kind of Greek institute in Mariupol or university or something like that. You know, and you know, what is happening there is a declaration of war. It breaks the Budapest Agreement of 1994, Budapest Treaty of 1994, and we've got to put a stop to it.
Answered before, and I would like to do that again. We face in Greece an urgent, well, this party in power, and we have a corrupt, now opposition party on our right, plus all the other crazies at the have failed. Tried to do something about elected to the government, to the parliament, and we failed. I think we don't have the time anymore to experiment again with coalitions and whatever. And it appears to many of us that whether we like it or not, the reality is that the only party that has made it, that is not very far from our positions, is Potami. We like it or not. I want your opinion, frankly, and not political, about what to do, because we are facing an urgent situation in Greece, and in a matter of months, we may have more elections, we may have chaos in many ways, and I think we have to strengthen the center, even though it's not perfect, and perfection is the enemy.
I think your frustration, and I am quite convinced many people in Potami, liberals, would be working. They may be social, they may be centrists. I was speaking today with Mildos Kirkos, who is one of their members, pronounced the name correctly, and I'm sure there are many more. Look, I think it is important with liberal forces wherever we find them, but not everybody will regard as a liberal party. And if you look at their choice in the European Parliament to sit with the socialist group and not with the liberal group, and that to me sends a signal. I hope that the liberal forces within that party might prevail and they might come back towards a more liberal position. But, you know, my experience of liberals across the continent is that although actually we are a more united force than either the right wing or the left wing, we are always fundamentally divided between economic liberals and social liberals. We all believe in traditional liberalism. We disagree about how you create a society which gives people the life chances that liberalism predicates. Now, sometimes, in times like this, when you're faced with a government of two very extreme parties, sometimes you have to try to bury those differences and all work together in one common cause.
I have one question that is based on your comments, and George Giannoulis, with which I perfectly agree on the issue of the identities of Europe. And I think it is essential, because on the same time we have the emergence of a new identity, European identity, which is a latent identity somehow in the minds of the people still. But on the same time, there is a reappearance of the national oldish identities, not exactly the identities of the 70s or 80s, but it is going back, very back actually, unfortunately. And in this struggle, which is clear in Greece we have a government of new communists and new nationalists on the same time, linked with the tradition of Greek nationalism to the Balkans, to Russia, and to the First World War period, actually. This struggle means that something has to prevail, and in the past, usually what prevailed when a unification process went on was against a common enemy, or against a common fear, or following a common plan. I don't see anything like that at this moment. In the question why I should vote for Europe, why I should go for liberals, I do not have a persuasive answer. There are a lot of answers. There are many small answers that I perfectly understand. I'm a logical person. But, you know, the rational way does not always work. Politics, probably you know that far better than me, are win or lost on the matter of symbols. And I don't see exactly what the symbols of Europe and the symbols of liberal Europe additionally are at this moment. This is my question and hope.
If I understand you correctly, your fear that some of the first victims of the recession that we're going through and the rejection of ideas will be some of our minority communities. I mean, in the United Kingdom, there is now very substantial anti-Islamic feeling and quite a lot more anti-Semitic feeling than has been the case in recent years. In Greece, you have a minister now who said that Jews and Muslims don't pay their taxes. In Hungary, we are seeing things in government, particularly directed towards the Roma, which are very worrying indeed, and we need a much more concerted European response to this. And since we are now much further forward in scientific than we ever were in the past, it is perfectly easy to demonstrate that human beings, every human being on the planet, is essentially the same. Cannot the kind of differences that are claimed, so the big basis of any discrimination is not there. We have to learn to live together in one community. Because otherwise, well, we know what happens. We know from the past. And the easiest way, I mean, this is one of the reasons why I think that the case for economic reform is so very strong. Because when the economy is doing well, when people are happier, things are getting better, they look for scapegoats in the same way. And therefore, a level of economic health is, I don't say necessary, but helpful dealing with communications in this way. But we still have to go back to civic education, which is the basis of all progress. There is a writer in the United Kingdom called H.G. Wells, no longer alive. H.G. Wells once wrote that the whole of human history is increasingly a race between education and catastrophe, and he was right.
Good evening, I'm Jean-Baptiste Perrin, I'm French, living in Greece, and D66 member.
Quel mélange.
More seriously, I know by experience, and from my experience in France, but also here in Greece, that liberalism is sometimes seen or heard as a bad word, or a naughty word, let's put it that way, in politics, but also in the media and the general public. Could you maybe give us some light on, I mean, in the light of the previous success of your own party in the UK, on maybe how to market, to sell better liberalism and liberal ideas in the wider meaning towards our own communities, our own general public, and here in Greece. Thanks.
Well, I think that liberalism is often most rejected when it is most needed. And one of the problems, a very serious problem we faced recently, is the demonization or diabolization of the word liberal. In France, in Italy, in Spain, and elsewhere. You know, the idea that liberals are some kind of Wild West casino capitalists, you know, who have no social conscience whatsoever, is utterly ridiculous, and it defies any reading of liberalism. There is a wonderful book done by a man called Philippe Nemo at the Université de Paris, Histoire du libéralisme en Europe. And what it shows is it doesn't matter which country you go to, it doesn't matter whether you look at Austria or France or Spain or the United Kingdom, there is a current ideas which expresses both economic vitality and social concern, and most of all expresses rights and responsibilities of individuals. It's a wonderful book. It looks at people like Pierre Bayle, Benjamin Constant, Popper, all the big liberal things. The leader of a party called Mouvement Démocrate in France, who refuses to call himself liberal. And I say, for heaven's sake, the more that you react to the attacks on liberalism by being ashamed of the word liberalism, the worse it gets. You have to go out there, and it's a bit like Charlie Hebdo. You need a big sign that says, Je suis libéral.
Okay. Can I just, I don't understand why more people just won't sign up to being individual members of ALDE. We all, well, sorry about the language, but we all bitch about how much liberalism gets a really bad vibe in Greece. But at the same time, there are various parties and people here which would rather say, yeah, we're liberals, but not quite, and we don't like labels, and my answer to whether you should go to Potami or any other centrist force is that's a political decision. But even in a cynical sort of political situation, saying that, yes, I'm part of a movement of 5,000 liberals, for instance, it's saying, yes, I'm a liberal and I don't know how many people like me there are in Greece. If we don't stand up and be counted, both in Europe, because ALDE, I don't want to put you in a hard spot, but will judge us many sort of people there are being liberal in Greece. The same will happen with the populists here. And the reason why we're so easy to have people taking swings at us from both right and left, because half the people that are liberals are overdoing it, and the other half are underdoing it, and well, saying I'm a closet liberal or whatever. And there needs to be a balance in this, and there needs to be an accounting of how many we are and what we can actually do.
You got it right, that's it. Come out of the closet.
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that people want to be elected and they don't want to have this. No. Just wanted to add that people want to be elected and they don't want this opinion to define them. They are very careful in words with which they later do their campaigns. So I guess that's an answer to why many people won't come out and say that, yes, I'm a liberal and I'm proud of it.
Yeah, but they get hammered as liberals anyway, so you're not really, I mean, people that are seen to be liberals get hammered as liberals by everyone. So you might as well say it and actually sort of start building a momentum. If you don't, you just get hammered. Oh, my personal opinion. Questions? If no one else, oh, okay. Yeah. This will be the last, and I think then we should just sort of move in a more informal format and discuss things. Of course, sure. We want the closing statement for the decision.
Hi, good evening. I will move to a more tangible issue. My question is, what is your opinion regarding the term announced by ECB? Would you justify it in terms of the threat of deflation? Would you say that it's just buying time because we have not moved into the needed reforms in Europe so that we can be competitive worldwide?
There is of the Keynesian liberal in me to ask the question as to whether we should have done this quantitative easing back in 2009 when the Americans did. If you look at the American economy, it's doing very well. Okay, there is a massive problem of American debt. But as the Americans said to the Chinese, it's debt, but it's your... You know, I mean, I just wonder whether this Friedmanite view which has prevailed for so long on the European continent has been helpful to us in recent years. Anyway, we're doing it now, and even if it is a case of too little, too late, I think it's justified. And I think we're already beginning to see the signs. I mean, you know, the euro has depreciated a little against the dollar, which is a good thing. It was... we are beginning to see growth in some sectors of the European economy. I would even go so far as to say, and this is a terrible thing for a politician to say, I would say the people who saved Europe were not the politicians, they were the bankers. Jean-Claude Trichet and Mario Draghi have been the real heroes of Europe's 5 years since the recession. If it had not been for Jean-Claude Trichet taking a decision for which he had almost no political cover, which was the decision to inject onto the financial markets in that crucial week in September 2008, over 100 million euros in liquidity every night, calm the speculators. If he had not done that, I don't know where Europe would be now. Europe would have been knocked for six. And it would not just have been the euro which was destroyed, it would have been the European Union. because you could never have coordinated 27 or however many 27 national banks to do the same thing. You know, the central bankers, sometimes without direct political cover, have saved us, and I think Mario Draghi is doing a pretty good job.
Okay, we'll just mingle now. Thank you everyone for the panel and oh yeah, we want a statement for the individual members. Yeah. What do you expect from us?
Oh, you want to say?
Yeah.
I've spoken
too
long. Well, just keep up the good work, guys. You know, keep working away. Remember Socrates. We are the hemlock boys. We're the ones who carry on where others left off. You know, I think there is a lot that can be achieved by individuals who share common beliefs, coming together, talking to each other, organizing to promote those beliefs. And it doesn't matter in what forum you're organizing, it doesn't matter whether it's locally, nationally, internationally. We've got to do it, and that's what's going to keep liberalism alive and allow our ideas to flourish when the times are more favorable. Just